Located between the orbits, the ethmoid bone makes up a portion.
I'm going to stop it there because it goes on to describe some things, but that's what I wanted to show you. And now next what I'm going to show you is how when you breathe, your skull bones are not stuck together. They're sutured, and they're sutured so that if you get struck in the head or you fall on your head, you won't crack your skull. These sutures will move. If your head was solid like a coconut, one little hard hit and your head would crack, and it'd be really dangerous. So there's a higher order to everything, and the body is made with high intelligence, and we have sutures there to make room for expansion and contraction and movement. So when we breathe, since our sinuses are inside our skull, they're like little balloons, our skull actually moves slightly. It moves ever so slightly. It doesn't move too much because we'd see that. But the expansion allows those sutures and the sphenoid bone to move. And the next video I'm going to show you is you had to look really close. It's going to show you how the sphenoid bone moves when you breathe. And the cool thing to me is it looks just like an owl in flight. It's ever so slight, but you can see the movement of the wings flapping and everything. See, it's expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting, just like an owl would be through flight. So that's pretty cool to me. Enough of that. The owl mystically is also associated with being able to see in the dark. And from my shamanic study, one of my favorite interpretations of shaman is one who sees in the dark. So once you start to wake up to the deception of what's happened to us, you begin to see in the dark. You begin to illuminate the darkness and the ignorance of the people around you, but first you have to illuminate that within yourself. Here is, at the bottom here at this page, is an ivory plaque from the palace of King Ahab, and it's in 870 BC, and it's two winged cherubs or angels around a object in the center that looks either dyed or like the pine cone, which the pine cone, why we call the pineal, is it looks like a pine cone. So again, here we have this old representation, very old plaque representing that part of the brain. Again, just awesome to me. So let's go over the pituitary gland a little. The pituitary gland is the two tablets that the Ten Commandments or the hormones are written upon. You can see here that there's an anterior and a posterior part of the pituitary gland. This little speckled structure here you see is actually the sphenoid bone. This is resting in the sphenoid bone. And the hypothalamus, which is in charge of turning nerve signals into chemicals, gives signals to the pituitary, which then gives signals to the other endocrines. And that's really significant because every endocrine is associated with a chakra. So if you can control someone's endocrine system, you can control their chakra system, whether it's open or closed. And if you want to become self-empowered, it's ideal that you actually take control of your own chakra system, your own emotions, and your own chemicals. That's the path of empowerment. You take it on yourself. Here you see a side view. You see right where the pituitary falls below, the hypothalamus just below it, and it's right behind the eye. So that's why it's associated with the third eye. Notice here, this is supposed to be the Ark of the Covenant, and you have a little preacher guy before offering incense and prayers. But look at his hat. I found lots of pictures, and these hats always look like mushrooms. And if you look at the pituitary, you turn it upside down, it looks like a mushroom. It has a very smooth shape like a mushroom. And it's known that psychedelics, shrooms, open up the pituitary gland. They open it up and you start seeing visuals and tracers and stuff like that. It's because you blow open the pituitary gland. Of course, to me, this is something you don't want to play with because it can throw you into illusion just as much as being misled by others. So some people usually come across practicing and playing with this a little bit. But if you stick with it too much, you can begin to deceive yourself and fall into your own illusion. So ideally, as you master the ability to release the hormones, they can open up your third eye without having to use an external drug that is uncontrollable. Moses, which means carrying in water, carries the commandments, the hormones, down from the top of the mountain to the rest of the endocrine system, to the chakra system. So here we have the correlation between the outside world, the input, our nerves, our nerve impulses are changed within the hypothalamus into chemical signals, and the chemical signals then control the endocrine system and our chakra system. Right there is the link between the physical world and the metaphysical world. If you can control that link, you can control anyone and everyone. And again here, just to show you from the side of the sphenoid bone, the pituitary sits right in that area perfectly. Hormones and the third eye. Your astrology chart is a map of how your brain works. So those of you that are into astrology or have studied it a little bit, ideally, to really get anything out of astrology, you have to study it pretty in depth. Just doing that whole newspaper thing every day, the newspaper is going to be a generic reading. Even if you're a particular sign like a Capricorn, every Capricorn is slightly different because of the different, what they call aspects between the different planets. Not everybody's brain is set up the same way. But in old text related to Sanskrit and Indian type ancient text, the astrology chart tells you how your brain functions, because actually every planet is associated with a different part of your brain. Like the sun, I mentioned earlier, is associated with your thalamus. The moon is the hypothalamus. And the moon in your chart is associated with your emotions. So here in this little picture here, you have the hypothalamus, and just below it is the pituitary. Whatever emotions you feel, now we're getting into Bruce Lipton stuff and other people's, What the Bleep movie, that goes into pretty in-depth about the hypothalamus. If you can control your emotions, you control what's excreted to the rest of the body, which means you control your chakra system. So the moon is associated with the hypothalamus, and it controls the pituitary gland, which controls everything else. The hypothalamus equals the link between your nervous system and your endocrine system. So the hypothalamus says, hey, I'm in stress, so it releases the hormone to the pituitary, which maybe releases it to the adrenals, and then you go through a whole stress response. So I'm going to go ahead and play you a little picture of, or a little video of how a stress response is played out in the body.